I think 12 states have done this, and 12 or 13 more have legislation pending. This is something I think that the time is right for, and I appreciate your support in spite of my friends who don't like it. I move my amendment.
You've heard the motion by Representative Murphy to amend. All those in favor say aye. Those no. Those appear to have it. Those do have it. Motion fails. We are back on the bill. Representative Murphy, are you finished? Okay. Next is Representative Potter Parshall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know about you, but most of my constituents complain mostly about property taxes. So much so that our appeals actually went up 300% in my county and the appraiser quit. So I think that this bill can actually do a lot more for property taxes. And that is why I have an amendment.
The amendment is long. Representative, would you like to explain your amendment?
Yes. So basically, this would be the Homestead Property Act 2 freeze for disabled veterans and seniors. It would increase the current maximum amount which is at 50,000 to 80,000, and it would increase the maximum appraisal of eligible claimants in their homes from the 350,000 to 595,000, and that would increase based on inflation, the property value. So that's the base of it.
Is there objection to waiving the reading of the amendment? There is an objection. The clerk will read.
On page 28, following line 36, by inserting Sec 19, KSA 2023 Sup 79-4508A is hereby amended to read as follows: 79-4508A. Paren A, for tax year 2022 and amend all tax years thereafter, the amount of any claim pursuant to this section shall be computed by deducting the claimant's base year ad valorem tax amount for the homestead for the claimant's homestead.
The objection's been waived. To speak on the amendment, the chair recognizes Representative Adam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the carrier stand for a question? Do you have
Yes.
a fiscal note on this?
I do. There's the edited section.
Okay, so the first year, and I apologize if you already covered this, the first year, is that fiscal year 25?
Yeah,
Is
it is the 56.3.
56.3 and 39, 49.1 in fiscal year, let's see, it'd be 27.
First year is higher because it goes retroactively.
Right, okay. Do you have anything beyond that?
In this amendment?
No, any fiscal years beyond that?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. We first implemented the Homestead Property Tax Freeze Program, gosh, is that 2 years ago, three years ago? So we've had that on the books for a little while. It is a fairly cheap program to implement at the start, but it is a property tax freeze. As property taxes go up, it takes about 15 to 16 years for this thing to be fully implemented, and it grows every year. This thing, I don't know what the fiscal note is once it's in that full implementation, because as you have people getting older, they qualify for more people qualify for this program every year. And not to be detrimental, but once people start passing away, that's when the program finally balances out. But this program still has about 13 years left to fully understand what the implications of this are. If we increase these thresholds more now, we're adding, another $56 million in the fiscal year 25, 39 in 26, 49. That number is going to keep growing. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but it grew from 26 to 27, it grows 10 million. I am assuming it'll probably grow another 10 million, potentially a little bit more, 11 and 12 for each additional year as more people qualify. So this is one of those things, a lot of the amendments that we put on that increase the fiscal note, front-loaded it. We have some money in the bank. We've got surplus right now. We can afford that. I don't think we can afford this, because I think this in the out years, I won't be here. I don't know how many of us will be, but this is going to be a substantially, it's going to be a substantial hit to the budget, because this is a refund that comes from the state. This isn't, unlike some other things that we've seen tonight, this isn't balanced on the backs of local government. This is directly from the state. So this will be an expenditure that we're responsible for, and I'd encourage you to vote the amendment down.
Further discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought I used up my word quota for today, but not quite. So this type of property freeze actually ends up with a different kind of unintended consequences, I think, is that essentially people who are under this freeze don't move out, right? And so that just creates another problem on the front end of home ownership, where there are just not available housing stock on the front end. If we actually just take this fiscal note and how much this property tax freeze costs and invest it in just building new houses, that's the real reason why these property taxes are going up, is because property values are going up, because there's a really mismatched supply and demand right now for housing in both rural and urban areas. So really, I would say this is maybe a Band-Aid solution to a real problem, I agree, but the actual solution, I think, would be actually just to build a lot more housing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Chair recognizes Representative Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have several homestead type, circuit breaker type programs in place in Kansas. This is one of the newer ones. We started a couple years ago. And as the chairman pointed out, this thing grows, the fiscal note, the current program we have, that fiscal note is going to keep growing substantially each year. We put this amendment on, it's going to grow even more. And I think we need to have this program in place a few more years to figure out exactly where everything settles before we try to do an expansion like this. This could be a very big fiscal note, so I would urge you to vote no on the amendment.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Potter-Prashall, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will say I do find it ironic, the speaking against it, considering this was included in CCR 8 last year. That said, I move my amendment.
You've heard the motion by Representative Potter-Prashall to amend. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Those appear to have it. Those do have it. Motion fails. We're back on the bill. You still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is, in the current bill, the property tax exemption has been brought up to 100,000, and the mill is still at 18. Having that mill at 18 benefits homeowners very little. It benefits ag a little bit more, but it benefits corporations extensively. The Walmart distribution center in Ottawa actually would get a $14,226 tax break from going down to 18 mil. And I was elected by my constituents, not by Walmart or Amazon or Panasonic. So I have an amendment.
The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
On page 4, by striking all in lines 15 through 40. On page 6, in line 24, by striking $80,000 and inserting $175,000. On page 28, in line 39, by striking 72-5142 and by renumbering sections accordingly. On page 1, in the title, in line 8, by striking all. After the first semicolon, in line 13, by striking 72-5142.
Representative, would you like to explain your amendment?
Yes, so this would basically put the mill back up at 20 and increase the exemption for residential property to 175,000. So any house under 175,000 would no longer be paying property taxes on that 20 mil to the state. It is a $300 savings per residential property in the year 2025, and it also moves upward for inflation, which gives it a $392 savings in 2028. Fiscal note is, in 2025, it is $8 million more than what the current fiscal note in the bill is, but that was before it was increased to 100 million, so I would probably say it's about equal at this point. I'll stand for questions.
To speak on the amendment, the chair recognizes Representative Adam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that this amendment, it appears to kind of balance itself out. It increases the residential exemption and it puts the mill levy back to the same. So I agree with you. I think it probably would be balanced out. But I go back to my earlier comments. We're keeping that mill levy steady. At this point, we might as well just repeal the revenue neutral language and the whole truth in taxation because we aren't going to follow it ourselves. And I also have to say I'm going to stand with my ag business people else out there, my producers. To say that this benefits them just a little bit is incorrect. Property tax is one of the biggest things that faces our ag producers. They have a lot of acres. They make a very small margin. They need a lot of acres to be able to make a profit. Knocking just 2 mills off of their property tax helps them. I haven't run the numbers. I wasn't aware of this amendment, so I didn't run those numbers on my own property to see what that would benefit me, but I have a pretty small farm. It's not anything substantial, especially for Western Kansas. They have thousands and thousands of acres, some of them. But I also want to address the fact that this helps corporations. It benefits small businesses, but yeah, it'll help benefit corporations too. But who ultimately pays corporate taxes? You'd probably be astounded if I told you corporations don't pay income tax. They don't pay property tax. They pass that on to the consumer. I don't know a single corporation that just pays their taxes out of the benevolence of their business model, regardless of their bottom line. Every single thing that you do to corporations, they have to market that into whatever their margins are, and that passes through to the consumer. It trickles through. I mean, it isn't a direct expense, so you don't see it. It's kind of like your withholdings and your income tax and your payroll. You don't see it, so you probably don't realize how much you're paying to the federal government, to the state government for your income tax on your withholdings because you never see it. I think the same thing's happening here. I would encourage you to vote down this amendment.
Further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Vic Miller.
Yes. No one, a living person or a thriving corporation, wants to pay property taxes. But today, the problem of rising property taxes is most acute for homeowners. I rise in support of this amendment for the reasons put forth by the maker of the amendment. The 2 mil reduction, 38% of the benefit of that goes to someone other than homeowners. We're not lowering property taxes on homes enough. I have yet another amendment that I hope to do that in addition to this one, but I rise in support of this amendment.
Further discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Barth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the carrier of the amendment to answer just a few questions I have. I just really would like some clarification.
Yes.
So I've attended multiple counties that I have in my district with all of the property tax increases that have happened locally, which have been astounding and quite upsetting to me. And this is a big, humongous issue in my district with the increases, and I have part of a county that you have in it, in your district as well. I personally have seen the increases myself, and so just want to verify. I've heard a lot of people who have said things about their taxes are going up and up on their houses, and they feel like they're going to lose their house, and these are senior people, retired people. So you said that the mill levy would stay at 20. So I want to make sure I understand the math. So $175,000 is what the raised property tax, like that's what, is that the exemption? Is that, what do you call that?
It would be the first $175,000 of the residential property exempt from the 20 mil tax
And that would be versus the 8?
versus 100, which
100.
was currently it's 40, but amended into this bill it would be 100.
So 175,000, okay, so that would help reduce. And then you said that would be a $300, and what was that savings? How's that calculated?
The $300 is calculated, so you take the home value, you'd subtract the 175, you'd multiply that by 1.115, and then you would multiply it again by 20, and then divide it by 1,000. That's how you would get to the number.
All right, and then the fiscal note, does it balance out, or how was that described?
With the 80, it was slightly more, but with the 100 that's currently amended into the bill, it would be roughly the same. I don't have the exact numbers, but that would be made up in that.
Okay.
And it also does account for inflation, so each year that $175,000 value would go up more.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so from what I'm hearing here is this is actually a benefit to the homeowners and property owners from being able to help them with reducing additional costs and taxes. I've had a lot of folks in my district who are literally being taxed out of their home. And I know of somebody personal in my life that is going to become homeless because of the taxes on their property. They can't pay the state of Kansas. And the state of Kansas is taxing them out of their home. So that means they have to sell their home in order to be able to have any money and have a place to live. So it's increasing our homeless problem, and I'd actually be in support of this. Thanks.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Potter-Prashall, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I was referencing the tax break for agriculture and saying that that was minimum compared to the corporate or commercial tax, just for an example, it would have been 640 acres in Franklin County, which is quite a bit for that side of the state. They would only pay $126 less with the current bill, how it is. That was before the 100, before it was put up to the 100. While I don't disagree that going revenue neutral on the 20 mills would be a great idea, but we'd also have to do that on the 1.5, and I don't see that happening. So with that, I move my amendment. Thank you.
You've heard the motion by Representative Potter-Prashall to amend. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
Division.
Have it. The noes do. Division's been called. Division's been called. The clerk will open the roll and you may vote. Not seeing 15 hands, this is not a roll call vote. Has everyone had the opportunity to vote? The clerk will close the roll. 28 yeas, 77 noes. The motion fails. We are back on the bill. Representative, you still have the floor.
Okay, so how about negotiating on that? I have an amendment.
It appears short. The clerk will read.
To you. On page 4, striking all in lines 15 through 40. On page 6 in line 24 by striking $80,000 and inserting $150,000. On page 28 in line 39 by striking 72-5142 and by renumbering sections accordingly. On page 1 in the title in line 8 by striking all in the first semicolon in line 13 by striking 72-5142.
Would you like to explain your amendment?
See, let me make sure that was the right one first. That would bring it to 150 exempt. Yeah. The first 150,000 exempt and bring the mill back up to 20. And there would be a savings of $30 million to the fiscal note in 2025 and $34 million on the fiscal note in 2028. I'll stand for questions.
Does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Chair recognizes Representative Adam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick. This is same song, second verse. It's a little bit different, but again, I just encourage you to vote this amendment down. We are balancing these things on the backs of our local governments by increasing this mill levy. The comment was made by a previous representative on the other amendment that they're paying this tax to the state of the Kansas. Kansas accounts for 20 mills on the statewide levy and 1.5 mills on the educational building fund. I can't remember what all the acronyms are for the 1.5, but majority of your tax bill, your property tax bill, goes to your local government. So we're blaming local governments for increasing taxes, yet we're reducing their tax base even more. It doesn't make sense to me. Please vote this down.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Potter Paschal, you may close.
I'll move my amendment.
You've heard the motion by Representative Potter Paschal to amend. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no.
Division.
Division's been called. The clerk will open the roll and you may vote. Has everyone had the opportunity to vote? The clerk will close the roll. Yeas being 23, nays 79, motion fails. We're back on the bill. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment.
It appears short. The clerk will read.
On page 27 in line 23 by striking 2026 and inserting all tax years thereafter. In line 30 by striking all after the period, by striking all in lines 32 and 31 and 32. On page 28 in line 12 by striking 2026 and inserting all tax years thereafter. In line 19 by striking all after the period, by striking all in lines 20 and 21.
Would you like to explain your amendment?
Yes, the current bill actually only goes 2026 with accounting for some form of inflation for standard deduction. This would continue the account accounting for inflation with the standard deduction. Stand for questions.
The chair recognizes Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the carrier of the amendment stand for question?
Yes.
Good to see you back. How you doing? How many more of these do we have before the senator that's pushing them lets us go home?
Representative, would you ask the question of the amendment, please?
Yes, that was a question of the amendment.
No, that wasn't.
Okay. How do I pose it then? Was this amendment given to us by members of the other chamber then?
No, it was not.
Okay.
Further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Adam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate this amendment. This was originally how we had things drafted in House Bill 2284. As I explained at the beginning, the reason that we put this sunset in was just to provide a trigger. It doesn't end in 26. The next legislature can come in and renew that. It's just a mechanism put in place to make sure that we don't tie ourselves permanently to that. I fully anticipate that this piece will get renewed in 2 years as long as we continue to have good economic revenues coming into the state, as long as things are looking good in Kansas. We just put this trigger in there to appease some of the concern that this could potentially tie us to out of control increases. Although if you do the math, and unless we're seeing inflation of like 10, 12, 15%, that increases pretty fast. But as long as inflation kind of stabilizes and we get back to that average 2.5% inflation, takes a long time to grow on these smaller numbers. So I would encourage you to oppose this amendment because the language that's in the bill to create that sunset was a part of a compromise language with some of the people that were concerned in our former bill about having that increase in perpetuity. So I'd encourage you to vote this amendment down, please.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Potter-Paschal, you may close.
Move my amendment.
You've heard the motion by Representative Potter-Paschal to amend. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. No appears to have it. Noes do have it. Motion fails. We're back on the bill.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say thank you for considering the amendments, and I do wish that there would have been more room for negotiating some property tax relief for my constituents. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, the hour is late, so I promise I only have one amendment, everyone. I'm here, I guess I'll turn the amendment in for. No.
The amendment appears long. Would you like to explain your amendment?
Yes, please. This amendment is basically House Bill 2636, which was heard in House taxation on February 15th. Would like to thank the chair for having a hearing on the bill and for the representative from Johnson County that filed the bill. What this amendment would do would reinstate allowing renters to be eligible to participate in certain homestead property tax refund claims. So how this works,
No pictures in the gallery, please.
This existed up until 2012, but with the budget being where we were, they had to look for ways to expand the tax base, and so this unfortunately was on the chopping block. But this would reinstate allowing renters to deduct up to 15% of their gross rent that they've actually paid, making that a credit. And so across the state, we actually have about 27% of Kansans that are renting. So earlier in the day, I, which feels like hours and hours ago, passed out a form to each of your desks that include the data from Kansas Legislative Research Department from last fall. That is sorted in the percentage of highest percentage of renters in the district down to the lowest. There are actually 66 of us in this chamber that represent a higher number than more than 27%, which is the statewide average. And so 66 of us have more renters than the statewide average. While there's a representative that has a higher percentage than me, I represent the most number of renters in the state. And so just for context, my apartment in 2017, I had to go back and look at my old leases, was $850 a month. Today, it's $1,475 a month, which is a 73% increase in just 7 years. So much of the growth that we're seeing in parts of the state are from our renting population, and a 73% increase is just not sustainable. Luckily, I'm in a place where I can make it work, but many of the folks across the state cannot. This would bring us in line with our neighboring states, Missouri and Colorado. We're losing out folks that are renting currently on the Kansas side of state line that are moving to Missouri. I'm sure the western part of the state's seeing folks move to the other side of state line too, because they're able to get, on average, a $300 tax credit at the end of the year on their Kansas income tax. This was heard in committee, like I said, in February. There is a fiscal note, which I believe was about $14 million, $14,070,000. And with that, I would be happy to stand for questions.
Just a reminder to those in the gallery that you can take pictures as long as it's not of the boards, but please do not use a flash. Is there an objection to the waiving of the reading of the amendment? Seeing none, does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? The chair recognizes Representative Adam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take a little bit different approach here. When I was a little kid, my grandma had a cookie jar in the kitchen. And of course, as an ornery little kid, I liked to go in there and sneak cookies out. I'd pull the lid off really carefully so she wouldn't hear me, and I'd stick my hand in there and I'd try to grab as many cookies as I can. The problem was the opening was really small. And when I got a whole handful of cookies, guess what? I couldn't get my hand out. I couldn't get my hand out with any cookies. So what I had to do was I'd reach in there and I'd grab 2 or 3 cookies and I could get that. This amendment adds another $14 million. We've put some money onto this, but it's been front loaded. This is another cookie that we're trying to grab. If we try to keep getting more bites of the cookie, pretty soon we're not going to be able to get our hand out of the jar. I apologize for the analogy. Maybe that's not, but it seemed like we were getting a little too serious here. But, you know, I appreciate this. We did have a hearing on it in the committee. I'm sympathetic to this cause. And I spoke with a few representatives that we probably need to look at all of the circuit breaker programs that we have on property taxes, because we try to focus property tax relief on low income folks, on senior citizens, on disabled veterans. We need, the 3 programs that we have are pretty confusing. I'm going to be working with several committee members on House tax to do away with all of those programs, create one simplified program that covers all of this. And at that time, I am going to be more than willing to look at adding renters into that. But I think we also need to understand that, you know, I was a landlord at one time. I rented my house out. My property taxes were a part of my overhead. I calculated that. So if I got property tax relief, it meant that I wasn't going to increase my renters, my lease agreement on the rent. So I have all my overhead costs that it cost me to operate that rental. And then I say, okay, how much do I need to apply for a reasonable margin? And that was the rent. So to say that renters won't get anything out of this, we're providing property tax relief, not directly to renters, but indirectly it does flow through down to them by keeping their rent low and not having to increase rent just to cover the property taxes. So I would encourage you to vote this amendment down.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? The chair recognizes Representative Sawyer Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. This exemption for renters has been in place almost as long as the homestead property tax exemption has been in place. One of the appeals of this is that, you know, right now I'm starting to really like the way that our House position on the tax package is looking. But one of the problems is that this doesn't offer direct relief to renters. A big issue that I have here is that as much as I want to believe in the goodness of landlords to pass those property tax savings on down to those that are renting from them, we can't always trust in them. This is an opportunity for you to, support the renters in your legislative district, and you've seen the form that the carrier of the amendment passed out. I honestly thought I had more renters in my district, but, it is kind of interesting to see where we all shake out. As far as cookies in the cookie jar, this is just a really little, really cute cookie that actually really sums everything up. Dare I say it's the icing on the cake, because so many different groups of people have gotten relief in this. This is an opportunity for us to restore a decades-old program that initially we wanted to put into place. Those of us who were here when we did tax reform back in 2017, this was a piece that we really wanted to add, but there simply wasn't any money there. I think that renters, a lot of our renters are hardworking folks who deserve the same property tax relief in a direct, reassuring way that we've given to homeowners. So this is an opportunity for you to universally support hardworking people in your district that really do deserve that same property tax relief that we're giving to everyone else. So I do urge your support. Thank you.
Further discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Sawyer.
Ever since 2013, I've been kind of working to get this reinstated. It was one of the, way back, going back to the 70s, we've had this program for renters. And then in 2013, when our budget was so tight, that was one of the things we cut. And I do think it's important to bring it back. And in full disclosure, I'm one of those districts, I'm probably fifth or sixth, something like that, the number of renters. I got a lot of renters in my district, so this is important in my area. But I do, so I will support the amendment, but I do want to point out there is relief in this bill for renters. The income tax portion definitely provides some income tax relief for renters. We had testimony in committee provided by Dr. Ginther at KU. One of the examples she gave was a person renting with $35,000, 2 kids, they'd get $183 in income tax relief out of the bill. So they do get income tax relief, and those renters who are seniors, now that we're totally eliminating the state tax and Social Security, they would definitely get that. So there are some pieces of tax relief for renters, but they're not getting the property tax portion. So I appreciate what the chairman said. I agree with him totally that we have done these circuit breaker programs separately, and now the programs we have, it's just confusing to people, especially since they pretty much have the same name. So they sound the same. So we need to really, I agree with them, we need to come back and get one program, and hopefully that time include renters, but it's important not to forget the renters.
Further discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask a question. Now I can't remember what it was, but I think it is really good. It's a good one for me. I have come here every year saying we got to do more for the low income people. Well, most of my renters are low income people. And if you look at that top line, I was shocked. 65% of my district is renter occupied homes. 20% is owner occupied. I had no idea, but that does make sense to me because I know that I live in an area where we have a lot of older people and a lot of students. So, that's what I've been trying to support down here. And it actually probably helps me to equalize my concerns about the lower floor category of this bill, because I wasn't really satisfied yet with this. I believe it's 3% up to whatever $1,000, 0% up to to $17,000 or something. And that's still under what we had before the Brownback tax bill. So that's, we had more benefit under the time before Brownback bill. It was 25,000 and under, so it was zero. So I'm struggling with this bill, but I've been really happy. But I do want to say the cookie jar is getting kind of tight, and I don't want us to make the mistake that we did before of Christmas treeing up this bill where we can't afford it and make the governor veto it. So I'm going to support this amendment, and I would support the bill, but we can't keep going, and I hope everybody's getting happy with the bill.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Woodard, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to have to bring some cute cookies for the body. Looking back at some of the testimony, I was shocked to learn a little bit from Kansas Action for Children on some of their inflation-adjusted dollars data. For the majority of folks that make $75,000 a year or less, there are a higher number of those people that are renting than homeowners. We hear a lot in this building about young people leaving our state because of our tax codes. So I commend the chair on the work they've done in the tax committee. I think we're getting to a really good solution. This is $14 million to help 27% of the state. It's still giving them just a little bit, just like they are getting out of the bill as it currently is written. But appreciate the conversation and thank you for the indulgence to allow me to do my part in standing up for my district. They're renters in my district because they cannot afford homes in my district. So with that, I will move my amendment.
Chair likes snickerdoodles. You've heard the motion by Representative Woodard to amend. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Here to have it. No's, the division's been called. Seeing 15 hands, this is a roll call vote. Clerk will open the roll. Has everyone had the opportunity to vote? Clerk will close the roll. Oh. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Representative Lewis votes no. Anyone else? Representative Penn votes no. Representative Dennis Miller votes aye. Anyone else? Seeing none, yeas being 36, nays 76, the motion fails. We are back on the bill. The chair recognizes Representative Vic Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment.
The amendment appears long. Would you like to explain your amendment?
Yes, I would love to. But first, I want to say thank you to the leadership for allowing us to have a debate on these issues. This is the first time in a couple of years we've actually had the opportunity to amend a tax bill and debate it, and I very much appreciate that, particularly with the hour being as late as it is. This amendment would strike the sections of the bill that repeal the local ad valorem tax reduction fund, and it would insert the provisions of what you'll find in House Bill 2508, which funds the ad valorem tax reduction fund at the current statutory rate of 3.63% of sales and use taxes, or a fiscal note of $130 million going directly toward tax relief for homes. It provides in that arrangement that the money will be in the form of a rebate directly to homeowner taxpayers. That would be my explanation, Mr. Chairman. I'd stand for questions.
Is there an objection to waiving the reading of the amendment? Seeing none, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Chair recognizes Representative Adam Smith.
I have a quick question for the carrier of the amendment. I was reading through, so I don't know if I heard you correctly. Is this reinstating both LAVTR and the city-county revenue sharing?
No.
Just LAVTR. Okay, thank you. You know, as we look through this proposal, this is something we haven't funded for 20 years. I think there was a little bit of money put in there, maybe around 2012. No, I'm looking at my appropriations chair. I thought there was a little bit of money that was allocated there at one point, not the full amount, but we haven't funded this for a long time. It's time to get this off the books. It's time to provide direct property tax relief through our statewide mill levy. That's the one thing that we can control here at the state, is that statewide mill levy. I was a former county commissioner. When I found out about these demand transfers that weren't being made, I was hopping mad until I realized how much money it was, and it wasn't worth my time, because it was going to be about, at that point, it was like $25,000 to Wallace County, where I'm from, and going through the headache, and it just wasn't worth it. That was less than a mill. A mill in Wallace County is only about $40,000. We could fund this. We could keep this fund on the books. We could fund it. But guess what's going to get the rug yanked out as soon as the state budget gets in a crisis? If we have a severe economic downturn, this is going to get pulled out from underneath the counties and cities, and this actually gets distributed, the local ad valorem does, to all taxing jurisdictions, whether it's your township, your library, or your fire districts, whatever tax jurisdictions you have in your county. So the number that a lot of people see is that big chunk. They don't realize that they have to split that. It goes to everybody, I think, except the schools, if I remember. Schools do not get a part of that distribution. By reducing the mill levy, we are providing what I would call permanent tax relief directly to your taxpayers. It's not going to be subject to appropriations any longer. I would encourage you to vote down this amendment.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Miller, you may close.
I don't know about you all, but the bad boy image that the chairman tried to paint stealing cookies didn't wash. He's a good guy. He's not a bad boy. No, I want to correct one thing he said. Under this proposal, the local units of government won't get the money. It'll be calculated as it relates to how much would go toward township, counties, cities, all those municipalities, but they don't get the money. They simply enter into the calculation, and the taxpayer will get the money in the form of a rebate on their tax bill based on those calculations. The tax relief in the current bill is very much appreciated. The lowering of the 20 mills to 18 is not a bad thing. Raising the homestead exemption to $100,000 is a great thing. All that taken into account, homeowners are going to get about a 3%, on average, a 3% reduction in their property taxes. That's not enough. This will add another 3.5%. I still think that's not enough, but it is the statutory formula, and I think that's what we should stick with. And just because we haven't done it doesn't mean we shouldn't. Long before we quit funding it, we had funded it. And we didn't quit funding it because it wasn't working. We quit funding it because the state got greedy and just decided to keep the money. Broke the covenant that had been made with local governments decades before that. You've heard me say this before, but I too was county commissioner. I was a city commissioner, city councilman in this town. And I got tired of hearing state legislators say they couldn't do anything about property taxes. They would blame the locals. No, that's wrong. You can do something, it just takes some money. And once upon a time, a tiny bit, 3.63% of sales and use taxes was dedicated from state revenues to locals to do something about property taxes. I will not belabor the point, but I would move my amendment and ask for a roll call vote.
Roll call vote has been asked for. Seeing 15 hands, this is a roll call vote. You've heard the motion by Representative Miller to amend. I guess division's been called for. Clerk will open the roll. You may vote. Has everyone had the opportunity to vote? Clerk will close the roll. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, 39 voting yes, 75 no, the motion or the amendment fails. We are back on the bill. Is this another amendment? Yes. Oh, sorry, didn't turn. You're good now.
Thank you. Yes, this is another amendment.
It appears long. Would you like to explain your amendment?
Yeah, this is easier to explain. This simply removes the provisions in the current bill that repeals the LAVTRF. Some may think we are not in a position to fund it this year, but I don't think we should shut the door and say we're never going to assist local governments in keeping property taxes down.
Is there an objection to waiving the reading of the amendment? There's an objection. The clerk will read.
On page 1, by striking all in lines 20 through 36, by striking all on pages 2 and 3, on page 4, by striking all in lines 1 through 14, by striking all in lines 41 through 43, by striking all on page 5, on page 6, by striking all in lines 1 through 18, on page 7, by striking all in lines 30 through 43, by striking all on page 8, on page 9, by striking all in lines 1 through 21, on page 28 in line 37, by striking 19-2694, 65-163J, 65-3306, 65-3327, 75-2556, in line 38, by striking the first comma and inserting and, also in line 38, by striking after 79-1108, in line 39, by striking.
The objection has been waived. Representative Adam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just echo my comments on the previous amendment. Excuse me. This is something we haven't funded for a long time. I understand keeping it on the books leaves the potential for it to be there, but if we haven't done it in 20 years, I think it's time to move on. Please vote this amendment down.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Miller, you may close.
I don't need to belabor it. I would simply move my amendment and ask for a roll call vote.
Seeing 15 hands, this is a roll call vote. A decision's been called. The clerk will open the roll and you may vote. Has everyone had the opportunity to vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, yeas being 39, nays 77, motion fails. We are back on the bill. Representative Miller?
I don't know if the lots of those proposed amendments would cause me to vote no. I may vote yes for this bill because there's a lot of good things in it. Congratulations to our tax chair, our ranking member, all those that had a hand in crafting this bill. I would just say this. If this bill passes tomorrow, hang tight. Do not let the other side mess with this package. I think this may be what people out across the state have been looking for. Hang tight if this goes to conference. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of Senate Bill 300. I know you wonder, why am I standing here tonight? Thank you. I'm standing here tonight because I'm very proud of the Kansas House of Representatives. I'm very proud of my Republican colleagues. I'm very proud of my Democratic colleagues. When I came to this legislature, after the special session of 2013, times were not good. We were fiscally in the wrong place, and we were headed the wrong way. We were spending more money than we were taking in. The joke was that we were shaking change out of the seat cushions to keep the state solvent. And I want to give particular appreciation to some of my friends in the Republican Party. There's some of us who were there in those dark days that are still here. And I know how difficult it was for some of my friends to go to the governor and say that your tax plan was not working. Had it not been for those acts of courage 10 years ago, we would not be sitting here tonight accomplishing something together that is truly meaningful for the citizens of our state. It took more than just telling the governor no. It took fiscal restraint during hard times. It also took a willingness for all of us to make the difficult decision to let the time pass to make sure that we were on the right financial course before we did what we were able to do here in the Kansas House of Representatives tonight. So as upset as some of us may have been with each other this afternoon on some other legislation, I hope all of you will be able to go home tonight and look in the mirror and say, we did something important for the citizens of the state of Kansas tonight. We earned our pay. I don't want to take the fire from the closing remarks of my leader, but now we have to put aside the comparatively minor differences we had on this tax package, and we have to stand fast in the face of what may be attempts by our colleagues from across the rotunda. If we can make what we've done here tonight stick, we will have all earned our pay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Sawyer.
I'll keep this short. It's kind of hard. That was a very good speech. Last two speeches were very good, but I also rise in support of this bill. This is meaningful tax relief. I think the committee did a very responsible job keeping it at that $500 million level. Those of us who were here in 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, those very tough years, know how important it is that we're responsible, that we make responsible tax cuts. This is good, broad-based tax relief. Everybody that pays income taxes will get income tax relief. Those in the middle come out pretty good. Everybody that pays property taxes will get property tax relief. Every senior in this state that pays Social Security will get a big tax cut. This is broad-based tax cuts for people across the state of Kansas. I wish we could say this was it. And this would go into law. As pointed out, we still have to battle the Senate, but we have a good, strong position in the House that benefits all Kansas. I think we'll be very proud of the work we did today.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Seeing none, Representative Adam Smith, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the comments of the previous two representatives. It's an honor to serve. It's an honor to serve with everybody. I appreciate all the hard work that's went into this. I might be the guy behind the microphone here, but there was a lot of people that put a lot of effort into crafting the bill that we have before us. I want to personally thank everybody for the ideas. There were some really good ideas that actually didn't make it into this. As I said in committee last week when we passed the bill out, there were some really good amendments that didn't get on. We're probably all walking away maybe a little frustrated. We'd like to see a little something different here or there, but I think overall we've put together a really good package. And I think, as I said in committee, I consider it to be a good compromise when everybody walks away equally frustrated. So I won't belabor the point anymore. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that when the body rises and reports, it reports House substitute for Senate Bill 300 favorably for passage as amended.
You've heard the motion by Representative Smith to report Senate Bill 300 favorable. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It seems to be, that was real close. Ayes appear to have it. Motion passes. All right, next order of business is House Bill 2609. To carry House Bill 2609, the chair recognizes Representative Turner.
All right, tough act to follow, but thank you, Mr. Chair. There were committee amendments. I move adoption of the committee report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Committee report is adopted. You may continue.
All right, body, this is a bill that comes from the Committee on Taxation. This is a House sub for HB 2609 would make changes to the property tax exemptions for electric generation property. Under current law, property tax exemption terms vary between 4 years, 6 years, 10 years, and 12 years, based upon a number of things, whether the property is installed as new construction, whether it's installed as peaking unit load, or whether it's installed for environmental purposes. Whether the company is seeking the exemption as a public utility or an independent power producer, and also whether the type of generation is natural gas, coal, nuclear, wind and solar are already exempted in another statute. So there were two separate bills that were brought this session to address these inconsistencies and to make these statutes clearer. When it was realized that there were two bills, the two parties got together, and that's why we have a House sub bill, because it was put into the bill that was introduced into tax conference. And therefore, this substitute bill would make all exemptions 10 years for all types of electric generation properties, and it would also include nuclear generation, because as we look forward, it looks like there's going to be a high probability that small nuclear SMRs, small nuclear generators, will be coming into the fold. So Just to sum it up, this bill levels the playing field by setting all property tax exemptions for new energy generation built after January 1 of 2025, because all current statute or current exemptions would stay the same. So looking forward, from January 1, 2025, all exemptions would be 10 years, regardless of who's building it, what the generation type is, what the fuel type is. This allows developers and utilities to know the exemption landscape as they plan and build their projects. There were no opponents to the bill and no fiscal notes. So with that, I would stand for questions.
Does anyone wish to speak on the bill? Chair recognizes Representative Sawyer.
Carrier of the bill did a good job explaining it. I rise in support of the bill.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Seeing none, Representative Turner, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that when the committee rises and reports, it report HB 2106 favorable for passage.
2609.
2609. You're exactly right.
You've heard the motion by Representative Turner to report House Bill 2609 favorable. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion passes. Next order of business is House Bill 2757. Chair recognizes Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were committee amendments.
Move the report.
Mr. Chair, there were committee amendments, and I move the adoption of the committee report.
Heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Committee report is adopted. You may continue.
HB 2757 is the adoption savings account. It allows an individual to open an account with a financial institution and designate that the account would be used to pay for or reimburse a beneficiary eligible expenses for the adoption of a child. This is a happy and good bill. We need to be doing this. It's modeled after the first-time home buyer bill. So there's some tax relief for the people that do this. Eligible expenses are the adoption of a child, legal fees, child placing agency, medical or living expenses of the mother or child related to the pregnancy, and medical expenses of the child. Annual reports are due, and it can cost upward to $50,000 to adopt a child. This helps people who want to adopt a child that's looking for a home to do it and be able to do it with the help of family and friends. There are many different technical bills involved, parts of the bill, but I ask you to look at the bill and just remember that this is something that we need to be doing for these people that want to adopt children. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Discuss the bill. The chair recognizes Representative Estes.
Thank you all for considering this bill. This bill actually was inspired by one of our peers on the other side of the building who recently had a horrendous adoption. And when I heard that story, several different memories flooded back at me once of friends who spent everything they had to adopt and literally didn't even have money for a crib after they adopted. Another friend had always dreamed of adopting and called me one day and said, I feel so weird. You know, I found out that when my relative passed, I have enough inheritance to pay for the adoption. I'm mourning, but I'm excited that we can finally have a family. And those ideas just clicked in my head and said, we need to do something like the first-time home buyer for this. And the testimony that we heard in committee was very incredible. One family emptied out their medical savings account in order to afford their adoption because their adoption continued to get worse and worse as they went through the process. And they are very humble farmers, but they spent that $70,000 that it took to get their child And they are definitely helping her to have a better life. This is a bill that will help change lives, and I hope that you will support it. Thank you.
Further discussion, the chair recognizes Representative Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of the bill. We've learned in committee that it costs $25,000 to $50,000 just to adopt a child. That's just the legal cost to do it, and let alone how expensive kids are. This just provides a way for people that want to adopt to put money into an account, just like we do for home buyers and other things. It works very similar. Let them grow that money tax-free, help them deal with those costs and be able to adopt a child. So it's got a very small fiscal note, $300,000 a year. I think it's a good feel-good bill that we can end the day on. So I urge you to support yes on the bill. Vote yes on the bill.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Seeing none, Representative Walsinger, you may close.
Thank you, Body. Thank you for the support. My intern was adopted from China 20 years ago. Her Gotcha Day was just at the end of March, and we are so glad that she's here. And I think her mother, when I talked to her, really wished she had this opportunity to do the same thing. And with that, Mr. Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports House Bill 2757, correct? Favorably for passage. It's late. We got to keep.
You've heard the motion by Representative Walsinger to report House Bill 2757 favorable. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion passes. Next and last bill for tonight. I know, you're awful. Well, maybe we could add a couple more. All right. Next order of business is Senate Bill 360. Chair recognizes Representative Getz to carry the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, body. This is a great bill. Senate Bill 360 is basically moving the date that an investment can be made in a ABLE account or a qualified tuition program or first-time homebuyer savings account. Taxpayers who contribute to these accounts after January 1st, but before filing an income tax return, will be able to choose the modification date on the previous year. One interesting thing on this with Interhap gave a testimony around this. This will give Kansas taxpayers on disability flexibility to save for hard times without going over their $2,000 of asset limit. So it's a good bill to support. Encourage your support. I'll stand for questions.
To speak on the bill, the chair recognizes Representative Haskins.
Okay. 20 minutes and I'll be done. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is a good bill. Please vote for it.
Anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Seeing none, Representative Getz, you may close.
From the representative, that's the fewest words I've ever heard from him when he spoke. You did well, my friend. Move that when the body rises and report Senate Bill 360 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Getz to report Senate Bill 360 favorable. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion passes. This does conclude our general orders. The chair recognizes the majority leader. Oh.
Mr. Chair, I move we rise and report.
You've heard the motion to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
The clerk will read the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole recommends that House Bills 2653 and Senate Bill 360 be passed. Substitute Senate Bill 300 and substitute House Bill 2609 and House Bill 2757 be passed as amended.
The Speaker recognizes Representative Hoffman to adopt the committee of the whole report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
You've heard the motion to adopt the committee report. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. Are there announcements? Speaker recognizes Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, Bible study, sleep fast. We'll see you there, 142 South. Thank you.
Representative Sawyer Clayton.
Good morning, Democrats. We have 8 a.m. agenda tomorrow in our usual room. I know. You're excited too.
Really quickly, body, I would just like to say thank you all so very much today for the decorum, the debate. Everyone's done a fantastic job. Thank you to our tax chair as well and everybody else who helped with that really big bill. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we won't have to go this late tomorrow night. So with that, the speaker recognizes the majority leader for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure it won't be, but let's go. All right, in accordance with House Rule 1502, posting of a sequence for the succeeding day, the following bills will appear on the calendar under the heading of General Orders for March 27th, 2024. Here we go. House Bill 2833, Senate Bill 318, Senate Bill 414, Senate Bill 419, Senate Bill 420, Senate Bill 362, Senate Bill 96, Senate Bill 438, Senate Bill 232, Senate Bill 349, Senate Bill 379, Senate Bill 500, and Senate Bill 430. Okay? Republicans will calendar at 8 a.m. in the old Supreme Court. There are 4 points of personal privilege tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until Wednesday, March 27th at 9:30 a.m.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.